Like lots of folks these days, I'm working from home. And as far as my work with Booth goes, that's unusual because typically I would have a couple of days a week on campus, and now I don't. Days with students, with my colleagues, with the community at Booth, and that's not happening right now. So everything is at home. Work is at home, family is at home, rest is at home, projects are at home. The whole bundle is here. That's not a bad thing, but sometimes it can get to be a bit much, and I need to just step out. And of course, stepping out these days is a thing we want to do with real care and consideration. So, what I do is I go for a hike in the woods, and the way I describe that experience is that it feels to me when I go for a walk in the forest, it feels to me like I can feel the stress draining out through the bottom of my feet. I can feel life coming in to me, that a replenishment of the things that feel depleted by the work and the effort and the stress of this season. And especially at this time of the year where the smells of the earth awakening, of what has always felt to me like the very most tangible expression of resurrection, of this new life emerging from frozen ground every spring as the sun warms. That's, to me, that's just such a powerful experience. So I go for a hike in the woods. And recently, while I was on a hike that was familiar to me, I came across something that hadn't been there the week before when I'd been on that same hike. About 3/4 of the way around this hike, I came across a poplar tree that had a red sash tied around it, and it wasn't like a narrow band of sash. It was a wide, generous, carefully woven together, tied together, big band of red. And when I see red fabric in the forest these days, what immediately comes to mind is missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And not only that, but the forest, although it's starting to come to life, it's still pretty gray. And to see this large swath of red fabric in this gray forest just arrested my attention. And so I wanted to go closer to it. And so I walked up to it to have a better look at it. And when I got closer, one of the things that I saw was that there were folds in the fabric. And in one of those folds, there was a small figure about this big, about the length of this part of my thumb, tucked into one of the folds. The figure was a plastic baby. And when I saw that, something in my heart just sort of broke, because the picture that came to mind, whether this is what was actually going on or not, I don't know, but this is a story that came to my imagination in that moment, was that this was a place where one of our First Nations brothers and sisters had marked the loss of a child. That's what those symbols said to me. And what happened inside my heart was this sense of, oh no, not again, because that story of settler Indigenous relations is a story that has so much sorrow and grief and loss in it already. And this just felt like grief on grief and loss on loss. And that brought to mind, as I stood there sort of attending to what I was experiencing, that brought to mind the collective experience of loss and grief that I think we're going through as a culture right now. And when I think about Booth students, when I think about many of you, staff and faculty too, but uniquely I think of students when I think of this, the loss and grieving of dreams and plans. I know lots of Booth students plan to work at camp in the summer, for instance. Well, that's not happening this summer, as far as we can tell. So there's a loss of that dream, of what that experience might have been like and what you might have learned and been able to give and receive. For many people, that was also their summer employment. And so the sense of grief and loss and anxiety that goes with, there goes my income. What does that mean about my plans in the fall? And on, right? These are things that break our hearts. These are things that grieve us. And we need to do something about that. It might not be what we expect. We're being told by the prevailing culture often, sometimes humorously, sometimes seriously, that all we need to do to save the world right now is, lay on the couch and watch Netflix and, eat Miss Vicky's and save the world. Um, and I think there's something missing from that picture. Yes, we need to stay home, and if that means watching Netflix, then let's watch Netflix. Let's do the thing that keeps the most vulnerable in our community safe. But I don't think that's actually all we're being called to. I think we're being called to something else that's very important and maybe a bit of a surprise for people. I think we're being called to grieve those losses. I think we're being called to attend to them, to mark them, to let them filter down into our spirits, to attend to them with real care and attention, as wholeheartedly as we can. Now, that might sound like kind of like a call to something negative, but I don't think it actually is. I think it's actually a call to doing the kind of work in our minds and our spirits and our bodies that makes room for things like joy or hope or new life. And if we don't do part one, we don't get part two, because part one's still in there in the way. We need to face and feel and acknowledge grief and loss. And then those feelings can move on and make room for other feelings and other thoughts, and make capacity in our spirits for things like the celebration that Christians mark at Easter, for instance, this celebration of life where we thought there was just death, or hope where it seemed like the story was over. When I think about things like this and why they matter, one of the places I look to is the ancients, to ancient wisdom, to enduring wisdom. And in this case, when I was standing there looking at that sash, what came to mind was actually a line from Ecclesiastes. A sad face is good for the heart, was the way I remembered it, because I remembered an old song that I knew that had that lyric as its chorus: a sad face is good for the heart. The actual text, Ecclesiastes 7:3, there's lots of different translations for this, but the one that I like the best says, "Sorrow is better than laughter, for sadness has a refining influence on us." Sorrow is better than laughter, for sadness has a refining influence on us. Sadness, if we will feel it, grief and loss, if we will acknowledge them and face into them, actually make us better. They enlarge our capacity, not just for those emotions and those experiences and for caring for one another and receiving care in those situations, but they enlarge our capacity for everything that matters. So, it might seem like an odd place to start a series of reflections, but I want to begin with the thing that we need to attend to make room for other good things. A sad face is good for the heart. Don't be afraid to mark the grief and loss of this season and make room for other good gifts. Reflect on that and see if it helps. And if it does, pick it up and take it into your life. And if it doesn't, leave it right where you found it. There will be something else. Peace.